Look, I already know that most of you that follow my channel already know this, but maybe you should share this with some of your friends. Proof that the United States government was caught poisoning an American city's water supply. Guess with what? Fluoride.
Well, a bombshell new report about the fluoride in our drinking water is out, and it confirms what we've been reporting here on this show for over a year, that fluoride is, of course, highly toxic. It's lowering the IQ of our children if they drink it or use it. Take a look. This is from the Associated Press. U.S. government report says fluoride at twice the recommended limit is linked to lower IQ in kids, according to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. So
That's
independent journalist Derek
liberals and
Broze has been covering the massive problems with fluoride and this lawsuit between the EPA and the Fluoride Action Network in a California courtroom. And so he is well versed on the horrors of fluoride, and we wanted to welcome Derek back to comment on this latest report overnight. Derek, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me back on, Clayton. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. And, I think the first time you were on well over a year ago or so, it blew my mind. I mean, it blew my mind, it blew Natalie's mind, and I think our audience was shocked by what you were reporting as it relates to fluoride. And, of course, you were covering this lawsuit at this time in the California courtroom, and now we have this new report. So, first of all, just your response to this new report from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services that fluorinated drinking water led to a 2 to 5 point IQ drop in children. Does that comport with what you know about fluoride?
Oh, absolutely. And, even the AP headline you read there, one of the points I want to make today is if you read that headline carefully, they couch it in these sort of...
This is exactly why Donald Trump needs RFK Jr. on his team. He went hard and heavy after corporations like Monsanto and DuPont and other companies, large corporations, that were knowingly poisoning the entire population of the world.
Caveated terms by saying twice the recommended limit. This is something that we've seen with this, not only with this lawsuit, with this, the entire history of fluoride research, is that the U.S. government, particularly the EPA and then the CDC, and then lobbying groups like the American Dental Association, refuse to accept that at the currently allowed limits, which is 0.7 milligrams per liter of fluoride in the water, there is harms to humans and especially to children in their developing brains. So you'll see in the headline, they say at twice the recommended limits. It's because they want to send the signal that, yes, we have to.
I bought a Zero water filter, and to me, that's probably one of the best besides the Berkey, but you can't get the charcoal filters anymore because of the FDA. Imagine that.
Acknowledge there's harm from fluoride, but don't worry, it's not going to impact you because it's not at the current limits. But as I'll talk about today, that is completely incorrect. And this is just one more piece of evidence that we have, those of us who've been following this for years now, to show that fluoride is causing harm, and it's causing harm to the most vulnerable among us, that being children, young children, as well as pregnant mothers and their yet-to-be-born babies.
How bad is fluoride, and what is fluoride?
So what we commonly call fluoride is actually a number of different substances, most commonly hydrofluorosilicic acid, which is a byproduct of phosphate mining. Now, there is a company that's in the United States, one of the most well-known companies. They're called Mosaic Company, Mosaic Co. They're based in Florida, and they do aluminum mining. And a byproduct of that aluminum mining is this substance, hydrofluorosilicic acid, which since the 1940s we've been told is great for remineralizing our teeth and fighting cavities, all of which has been debunked since then. And they started adding this fluoride to the water all around the United States since that point, starting with Grand Rapids, Michigan, and now in the United States and parts of Western Europe and even Canada are now considering it. Nearly every major city in the so-called modern world is doing this. But as the data shows, and as I learned through going to the trial in San Francisco and interviewing the experts, we've known for almost 100 years now. The data has been out there showing the various harms associated with fluoride. This National Toxicology Program final report here is focused on.
If you spill fluoride on the ground, you have to call hazmat to come clean it up, okay? Yeah, it'll burn a hole in the concrete.
IQ and neurological issues, but that is unfortunately not where the problems with fluoride end. We could talk about bone problems, we can talk about kidney issues, liver issues, and of course there's the calcification of the pineal gland. There's a number of different problems, but this particular report is focused on the damage to our brain, which is obviously something very important.
So the idea that 100 years ago we knew that this was bad, it was this byproduct, an offshoot of the mining, of this aluminum mining. Was it used as a way to, instead of dumping it illegally, oh, we're just going to use it in our drinking water and therefore it's safe for all of you? I mean, is that a way around
absolutely
the pollution?
Absolutely. So in a typical circumstance, these aluminum companies like Mosaic and others, and some of the fluoride has come from China and mining over there, they would have to figure out a way to dispose of this in some sort of environmental safe way. But instead, since the fluoride program, which by the way, the CDC still claims is one of the top 10 public health achievements of the 20th century, they are able to instead profit from this way. So instead of having to spend money to find a way to safely dispose of the fluoride, the hydrofluorosilicic acid, they get to go to major cities like where I'm originally from in Houston, where the city of Houston has had a contract with companies like that for years for $1 million a year. $1 million a year of taxpayer money going specifically to put this poison in the water. So the companies profit to the tune of hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars, instead of having to spend their own money to properly dispose of it.
Wow. And then, of course, that's in the drinking water. And then when you look at this lawsuit that you've been dealing with and covering, what is the argument from the Fluoride Action Network against the EPA? What has been the crux of their argument in this lawsuit?
So they originally filed a petition under what's called the Toxic Substance Control Act, which was a sort of a new opportunity for U.S. citizens to file petitions with the EPA if we believe that we have data and evidence that proves that a substance or a chemical is toxic. So the Fluoride Action Network, which has been a long-time advocate for protecting people from fluoride, I think since 2004, they got to work. They filed a petition providing numerous data showing all the various harms associated with fluoride, and the EPA, of course, denied that petition. Then the Fluoride Action Network filed lawsuit against them. And so that has been dragging on now for we're looking at almost a decade now, 8 years going on. And their argument is essentially that the data is out there. There's plenty of evidence, as this new report is showing as well, to conclude that fluoride is indeed a toxin. It has numerous harms to human health, as we've talked about, developing health and going into adulthood. And that's essentially what they're arguing and what they had to prove in court. And having attended both phases of the trial, first via Zoom during COVID lockdowns, and then again earlier this year in the San Francisco courtroom, they have gone above and beyond, proving that, I would say, beyond a shadow of a doubt. It is now still in the hands of Judge Chen, the federal judge in San Francisco, and he heard from the EPA, heard from all their expert witnesses, and he heard from numerous expert witnesses from the Fluoride Action Network, including some of the leading experts on mercury poisoning, on lead poisoning, and is basically asking the U.S. government and the EPA to apply the same standards that they applied to lead and to mercury, apply those same standards to fluoride, and so far they have refused to do so. And the EPA, although I will acknowledge that there was a historic moment at the trial where the EPA did acknowledge that yes, fluoride is a neurotoxin, the main crux of the debate or the disagreement is at what levels that harm actually begins.
We know it's a neurotoxin. Yes, we will admit it. Just depends on how much you get. I mean, what can families do about this? I mean, our family, we've got 3 kids, Natalie and I, and, we make sure, so we got that like Hello toothpaste, it has no fluoride in it. This is not a sponsor of the show or anything like that. I know there's all sorts of brands out there now that have no fluoride in it. That's one thing I guess you could do. But as far as the drinking water, what are Americans supposed to do? Are they aware how much fluoride is in their water? Do they know? Are American families notified how much of this neurotoxin is in their drinking water?
I don't think the average American to try to be kind to everybody. I don't think the average American's paying attention. I know people who still drink out of the tap, and I would say immediately that's one thing you should stop doing. Anybody who's listening to this, stop cooking your food with the tap water, stop drinking the tap water, stop making your coffee with the tap water. Because, for example, if you want to make some pasta and you put tap water in there that is fluoridated, because of the fluoride being a salt, it will actually increase. It doesn't evaporate as you boil the water away. It increases into your food, so you concentrate it in your food. So then you're going to be absorbing that. And this is another important point with the NTP report. Now, I mentioned earlier how the Associated Press and other corporate media, they're trying to, they're reporting on this, but they're adding the caveat, but they only looked at limits way beyond the currently allowable amounts in the United States. But that is actually inaccurate, because there's not just one single source of fluoride. Yes, you get it from the drinking water, but you can also, as you mentioned, get it from the toothpaste. The other thing is when you're showering, you're going to be absorbing that fluoride into your skin. And then if you are eating processed food, canned goods, etc., unless it specifically says it's reverse osmosis filtered water, more than likely those canned goods are using fluoridated water. All processed foods contain fluoridated water. So there are numerous sources that people are being exposed to this, not just children, not just pregnant mothers, but all people. So one of the best things you can do is to get a reverse osmosis filter. And I'm not talking about just a standard kind of pitcher filter you might buy from Walmart or something. Most of those really don't do anything. I mean, they'll remove some things, but they're not going to get fluoride out. Reverse osmosis is the only process that is strong enough to actually remove fluoride out of the water. And then, people do need to remineralize their water because it's so strong it takes out maybe some of the good minerals you want as well. But you can do things like that. I mean, companies do sell shower filters. You can buy, if you can afford it, you can buy whole house systems where you can install it actually under the sink, and so the water that comes out is filtered. But I understand that's probably out of the range of many people. One of the things that I've seen in traveling all around the United States is that nearly every state and every city has these water filtration stations. You'll see them as you drive around. There's the Penguin, there's the Windmill, there's a few different brands of them, and those tend to do about 7 to 8 different types of filtration, including reverse osmosis. So like in our home, we go out and fill up 4 or 5 gallon jugs and bring them home, and then that's what we drink with, that's what we cook with. We have a shower filter here at our house as well. There are steps, thankfully, that we can take to protect ourselves. But of course, some of us would like to believe that the government is supposed to protect us, and why?
Just remember that the skin is the largest organ of your body, and it absorbs everything it comes in contact with. Keep that in mind.
Are they not taking these steps? Hopefully that will change now that this final report from the National Toxicology Program is out. Hopefully we will be getting a rule.
Thankfully, it is regenerative, like the liver. The only 2 organs of the body that can regenerate themselves are the skin and the liver.
From Judge Chin, and if he does rule in favor of the Fluoride Action Network, although it will still take some more bureaucracy and a little bit of time to get it done, it would be the end of water fluoridation.
Wonderful. Yeah, I think that's the solution, because these reverse osmosis systems are very expensive, and Americans are really strapped right now. So you're going to ask them to put in, I'm saying the government needs to step in here, because you're going to ask every American to do a $2,000 to $3,000 reverse osmosis system in their house, and it's just not viable for so many Americans right now. We need the federal government to step in and remove this from our.
And then you also have maintenance and filters you got to change. It's very expensive.
Water. So, Derek, thank you for your amazing reporting on all of this. Where can people find you online and your reporting?
Absolutely. Clayton, I'd like to add one more brief point if I can, because I just want to hammer home how important this report is. I just want to mention that the NTP's report, this final report that we're finally seeing, this has been kept secret for the last 2 years at least. The only reason we ever even knew about this report is because of this lawsuit. And through the fluoride lawsuit, we were able to get emails which show that the current Assistant Secretary of Health, Rachel Levine or Richard Levine, depending on your preference, directly blocked the release of this report more than a year ago, more than 2 years ago. And because of the emails that have come out through this this court case here, we actually were able to get some a view into the background where we saw conversations between the peer reviewers and we saw conversations between the scientists. And I just want to make this point clear that the NTP scientists, well before this final report has come out, they have been fighting to get the truth out. They have been fighting to maintain their conclusions. Every time these anonymous peer reviewers from the government would try to come in and say, we think you need to change the language here, we need to do this thing, the scientists continuously come back and said that, we believe in our assessment. In fact, I'll just quote them. They said, quote, "It is true that our stated confidence assessment is based primarily on studies with total exposures higher than those generally associated with consumption of optimally fluoridated water in the United States. However, the confidence assessment also included findings from studies with fluoride exposures that are similar to or even lower than the optimally fluoridated water supplies in the United States." So I just want to make that clear that there are NTP scientists who are not famous or well known, but they have been fighting for the last few years to make sure that this report came out. And it's only because of Rachel Levine and other special interests, including the ADA, that it's taken this long for this to come out. So I want people to understand that there are some good scientists within there trying to keep the data alive, and they've been fighting to get their conclusions out.
Don't forget, Rachel Levine was also a Biden and Harris appointee, the freaking transgender freak.
And if anybody wants to find more about my work, I'm at theconsciousresistance.com. We have an entire section of our website called Water Fluoridation. You can find all my reporting, all of my interviews with the expert witnesses from this trial, and you can also find my written articles over at thelastamericanvagabond.com. We similarly have
Right
a whole
on.
section dedicated to the fluoride trial and all of the
So he works with Ryan. Huh, that's freaking cool.
articles I've written on this for the last 4 or 5 years. And you can find me on Twitter at dbrosLiveFree.
They're all kind of associated with Whitney Webb, another deep researcher.
I appreciate you having me back on.
My pleasure, and wow, I didn't know that about Rachel Levine. So the Biden administration trying to hide this from the American people. Very interesting. Derek, great to see you. Thank you so much for joining us. As always, we really appreciate it.
Thank you.